As most of you are aware, in the US, and what I think should be a rule for every country, if I or the other pilot choose to get out of the flight deck and go to the bathroom, a flight attendant has to come up there and be up there on the flight deck. There always need to be two crew members. It can be two pilots, it can be a pilot and a flight attendant, but there always need to be two people up there. Because in the event that, let's say, I go to the bathroom and the other pilot that's up there decides to have a heart attack, or he starts choking while he's eating, there's no one to allow me to get back onto the flight deck to fly the plane. And as you can imagine, the first few times that you go onto the flight deck of an airliner, it's pretty exciting. And that was the case for this new flight attendant, and we'll call her Jasmine. Jasmine's not her real name, but that's what we're going to call her. Now, Jasmine was paired up with a senior flight attendant, sometimes referred to as a senior mama. And so you had Jasmine and this senior mama that were working up in the front part of the galley, and then you had me and the captain that were flying on this flight. As most of you know, during boarding, I used to spend a lot of time hanging out in this area right here. Behind this door is the flight deck, over here is the galley, and then you have the bathroom right here. I would hang out in that spot during boarding because usually the flight attendants are moving around the stuff in their galley, and I'm able to see when the snack basket comes out, and I can see if there's any good snacks without getting into their work area and start trying to find it, because I know it seems silly, but they're hard to find sometimes. These snack baskets, the flight attendants know where they are and I don't. I have to open every single thing and they get annoyed if you're in there. So I'll just hang out there, make small talk with them, and then wait till I see the snack basket come out, and then I'll say, "Oh, look at that. Do you have some extras there?" Or something like that, and that's usually how I would score my snacks. So I was making small talk with this new flight attendant, Jasmine, and that's when I found out she had just started like a month ago. So Jasmine and Karen, which will be funnier later in the story that was her actual name, but Jasmine and Karen were up there, organized everything. I got some snacks and I started thinking about some pranks to pull on Jasmine. And for the record, pranks aren't hazing, and that's according to firefighters. And in this crazy world, if you can't trust firefighters, who can you trust? Anyway, this was day 2 with me and the other pilot, and I started telling him, "Hey, Jasmine's brand new. I have this prank idea I've been wanting to try for a while." We had 2 hours or so on the ground there, so I explained to him what the prank was during the next leg of the flight. During that leg, I explained to him everything that I wanted to do. He was on board to do it, so as soon as we landed, we had some time on the ground there, and that was time for me to get started on this prank. I don't know if you're familiar with this trick on the iPhone, but you can zoom out, and it turns your iPhone into a really wide angle, like a GoPro. So I got my iPhone and I went to the medical kit. Now the medical kit is something that is not supposed to be opened up unless there's a medical emergency, because things could be missing that would be needed by doctors while you're in flight, which I didn't know before I opened up the medical kit. Anyways, I opened up the medical kit and I got up the medical tape, which looks like this. This is the stuff that we use to wrap bandages up or whatever the doctors need it for. Well, I took a bunch of that tape and I took my phone and I put it in that really wide angle mode, and I taped my phone into the corner of the bathroom. I taped it up there, had it on the wide angle shot, hit record, closed the door, stood outside in the area, walkway area there for a couple of minutes, then opened the door, went inside, pretended like I was going to go pee, pretended like I was washing my hands, doing a bunch of normal stuff that you would normally do in the bathroom, and you should always wash your hands after you go to the bathroom, then walked out, closed the door, and then let the phone sit in there for a couple minutes. Now what you as a passenger may not realize is if the crew is already on the plane waiting for their next flight, they're usually just sitting randomly throughout the plane. So it wouldn't be weird for the flight attendants to see me hanging out and going in and out of the bathroom. That's pretty normal, while they're sitting there on their phone, because usually they're just distracted by whatever else they're doing on their phone. So I waited a couple minutes outside while the camera continued to record in the bathroom when there was nobody in there. And I went in, hit the record button, took the tape, threw it away, took my phone, and then I uploaded it onto my iPad. We use this iPad for a lot of different things, but in cruise, we don't really use it for very much. So now we're on the next and final leg of our flight. I call back to talk to Jasmine and say, "Hey Jazz, I need to use the bathroom. Can you come up here?" She's of course super excited to come onto the flight deck, because who wouldn't be? She had never been up there in flight before, so she was excited to come up there. So she comes up and then I go back. Now remember, the bathroom, the flight deck, and the galley are all very close together. All I have to do is come out of this door and go into this door right here. So while Jasmine's up there all excited, she's looking at everything, she's looking at the screens, and then she looks over next to my seat and she sees the iPad. And that iPad shows me in the bathroom from the video that I recorded earlier. And she goes, "What's that?" And the captain said, "Oh yeah, no, it's this new thing that I started doing because I got a little nervous because people were doing crazy things in the bathroom. I wanted to have some eyes on the bathroom just in case something happened, I would be able to know before it got out of control. So we just put a camera in there." You can imagine Jasmine's face looked something like this. So I know how long it shows me in the bathroom in the video, so I make sure that I'm able to get out, call Jasmine, tell them I'm ready, and she comes off of the flight deck and doesn't really say anything to me. And I come up there and I go, "How was it?" And he goes, "Oh man, she couldn't believe it, la la la." And we start talking about how funny it's gonna be when we land and we get everybody off the plane and people start asking about what's going on. So we're having a fun time the last hour of flight talking about how funny it's gonna be once everybody gets off. Meanwhile, Jasmine's in the back talking with Karen, explaining how she just saw a live camera of the bathroom while she was up there on the flight deck. Now Karen, being a senior mama, knows there's no way that that's true, but Jasmine insists. She says, "I saw Kelsey come out and I saw him go in the bathroom and then I saw him go out." So they're busy in the bathroom looking around trying to find this hidden camera. Of course they can't find it because there is no such thing as a hidden camera in the bathroom. So while all the flight attendants in the back have now talked about it and are freaking out, we're up there having the time of our lives. So we keep it all normal and safe, of course, as we come in and land. We do all of our normal procedures and we're headed to the gate. Now, as we're pulling up to the gate, it normally looks like this, but instead we see two police officers standing there, which is not normal. Now, in my history, I have had times where I've had to call the police because there was something going on in the flight and we needed police on the plane as soon as we landed. We had not made any calls, so we were thinking, man, there must have been something that went crazy in the last couple minutes here back there, because otherwise they would have relayed to us what was going on, but they usually aren't going to bother you, especially when you're in the landing phase of flight, because they know that that's critical and important. So we thought there must have been something that happened where somebody called 911 or there's a medical emergency or something. Anyways, we'll find out as soon as we park. So as we pull up and park, we're thinking, what's going to go on? Let's open the door and find out so we can be there to assist these police in case anything is needed. So as soon as we pull up, we set the parking brake. The jet bridge is coming up to the plane. I open up the door to the flight deck and I say, "Hey, Jasmine, what's going on? What's happening back there?" And Karen jumps up and she gets right up in my face. She goes, "Oh, you're about to find out what's going on. You're about to find out." So I'm thinking, wow, Karen is really not happy with me. And so usually if there's a situation that the police need to get somebody off of the plane, they'll get on and they'll tell people, "Hey, keep your seats," and they'll go on and get to that person before everyone's moving and there's a lot of motion happening. But that's not what happens. They open the door and they immediately come up into the flight deck. Now, it's not that spacious of a zone, and both of them were trying to squeeze themselves up there, but there was really not a lot of room. So they started saying, "Hey, we have reports that there's a camera in the bathroom. What's going on?" And I immediately knew what was going on. So I pulled out my iPad. I showed the police officer, "Hey, this is what was going on. It was a prank." And I explained to him everything that was going on. I was like, "This is a video that she shot, and this is how I shot it, and this is what happened." Well, the police officer also didn't find it very funny. You know who else didn't find it funny? HR and the chief pilot. When we got called to have to explain the story to them, they also didn't like it. So apparently, hazing is also pranking, I found out. But in the end, afterwards, Jasmine did think it was pretty funny once she realized everything was going on, or at least that's what she told us. Now this story I have a hard time believing, but I've heard it from a few different pilots, and just recently I was flying with one of the captains that was on the flight while this thing happened, and he says for sure it's exactly how it went down. They were flying from Europe to America on one of these tracks here. They're called North Atlantic tracks. Now I've talked about it in some other videos, but if you aren't familiar with it, these are kind of highways in the sky. They're selected for a specific speed, a specific altitude. Everything is very regulated because you're not in radar contact because you're over the ocean. So during this flight, this captain was flying the Dreamlifter. It's our least efficient 747. If you aren't familiar with the Dreamlifter, this is a modified 747 that I fly, and on the inside we carry parts of the 787, like the wings and the fuselages. Now while we're crossing the ocean, there's two frequencies which we always monitor. Every airline pilot is going to monitor these two frequencies. It's 12345, it's a secret code, right? And then GARD, which is 121.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is sometimes, by some pilots, referred to as fingers, but those are the two frequencies that you're monitoring while you're going across the ocean in case you encounter any type of an emergency or any type of a problem, or you have a question about a plane. You may ask them on that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frequency. So you'll say something like, hey, the plane that's crossing this latitude and this longitude at this altitude, because you can see roughly where they're at, and you can see on the screen on our plane if they're above you or below you, and you can ask, hey, at this altitude, at this location, what's going on with the winds, or whatever you may be wondering. You're able to communicate with the other planes that way. So like this here is a video that I recorded while we were crossing the ocean. So I'd be able to say, hey, plane at this altitude and roughly at this location, what's going on with this, the winds, or whatever I'm trying to ask or find out about. So that's exactly what happened when these pilots saw the Dreamlifter, because the Dreamlifter is not a normal looking plane. It's weird, it's enormous, and so that's exactly what they said. Hey, Ford engine aircraft at this location, I have a question for you. Are you on fingers? Because you see, while the planes are flying along on this route, everything is very quiet because there's no talking with air traffic control. The other thing to keep in mind about this is there's something called SLOP, Strategic Lateral Offset Procedure. And the planes use that when we're crossing the ocean. It's a safety protocol, but it's also in the event that you were flying right behind another plane and you were getting in their wake turbulence, which means you have a very rough, bumpy ride, you're able to slide 1 or 2 miles to the right of their flight path so you're not in there chewing up on their wake turbulence. If you were flying right here on this route of flight and you wanted to slop, you'd slide over to the right here and you would no longer be flying underneath them, and it's totally acceptable. So just like the video that I showed you that I took of another plane, it was kind of like that, except they were within 1,000 feet of each other. This pilot that was above the Dreamlifter was slopped to the right of the plane, and so the captain, and out of the captain's side, the pilots were able to take a couple pictures of the Dreamlifter. And they said, hey man, this is really cool. We got some really cool videos and really cool photos of your plane. Do you want us to send them to you? And the pilots that were talking to them via the radio were saying, yeah, sure, yeah, go ahead and send them to me. Let me give you my email address. But the pilot just said, I will unslop and just airdrop you the pictures. Essentially, what his idea was is that he would slide right back on top of the other pilot. Now keep in mind, there are specific speeds that we are supposed to be going at. We get assigned a specific speed and we're required to keep that speed. So I don't know if they were given a free speed, which means you're allowed to alter your speed, but it's a very specific speed that you're assigned. You have some wiggle room, but if it changes by more than a couple minutes, then you have to notify air traffic control. So I don't know how they worked out the timing to get right on top of each other, but they worked it out where the guy unslopped, got right on top of the other pilot, and then he said, turn on your airdrop so he can airdrop it to you. If you aren't familiar with an Apple product, you can airdrop pictures or videos or anything to somebody else without having their phone number. So that's exactly what his idea was. He was thinking essentially he would get right on top of them and then airdrop the pictures from above. The theory being that because they were over the ocean, they didn't have any interference. See, when you're on the ground, you have a bunch of different radio waves and signals that are being sent across where you're at. However, at 30-something thousand feet over the middle of the ocean, you don't have that problem at all whatsoever. So they were able to airdrop those photos and videos to those pilots while they were flying in flight. Then when the other pilots came back from break, they were able to show them the pictures. That apparently is a story, and that captain is sticking to it. I know, I find it a little bit hard to believe myself. If you want to hear some other stories, if you enjoyed these, you're going to enjoy these 2 videos over here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.